Columbus City Council's sixth virtual town hall. I'm Shannon Harden. I have the honor of serving you as City Council President. Today, we're going to hear from my colleagues, President Pro Tem Elizabeth Brown and Councilmember Emmanuel Brown. We also will be joined in and out by different council members. So certainly want to thank them for their participation as well. This week, we're going to focus on Columbus's slow transition to reopening. Once again, we have our interpreters from the American Sign Language from the Deaf Service Center. I want to thank them for their interpretation, for those interpreters being a part of the town hall this afternoon. At this time, like we always do, I'm going to hand it over to Edward Johnson, who is the Director of Policy at the Columbus Public Health, and who will just give us an update. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for being with us. How are things looking as pertains to COVID in our community?
Thank you so much, Council President Harden. As we look at the state of COVID-19 in our city and in Franklin County, as of today in the city of Columbus and Columbus Public Health jurisdiction, we have 4,305 confirmed and probable cases in the jurisdiction. That's and we have 188 deaths. That's a 4% mortality rate. That's 188 deaths too many. And so we continue the work of trying to contain this virus and the subsequent disease. Of particular note, and this has been continuing, we have 1,346 cases that are African American. That is 31% of our total confirmed and probable cases, and that is a plurality. That is the largest group that has been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the city of Columbus. We have seen a slight increase in our 7-day moving average, and so that's not encouraging, but we'll continue to look into what happened and why that was caused. And so that's kind of the picture of COVID-19 locally. Hospitalizations are at about 12%, which is very consistent, and so we are somewhat we're encouraged by consistent numbers, and we have some work to do to look into some of those numbers that have been rising.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Got a couple questions from folks, and first, just wondering how is testing going, and what is public health's role in testing, and what are those other partners that are helping us out as we're testing folks?
Absolutely, Council President. That's a great question. As public health, one of our roles is to monitor what's going on in the county or in the city, as the case may be, in terms of cases, in terms of who can get tested, who's not getting tested at this time. In the past week or so, we are moving to priority 4, which means that individuals who are symptomatic, they don't have to necessarily have one of the underlying conditions to qualify for testing, to be expedited. Any individual who is symptomatic should be able to get a test in the city of Columbus, given our numbers and given where we're at. We have been working really closely and very diligently with our hospital systems, OSU Medical Center, Ohio Health, Mount Carmel, Nationwide Children's Hospital. And in the very near future, we're very encouraged that our federally qualified health centers, our FQHCs, can be bringing testing online in communities of need where we're especially seeing some flare-ups or hotspots, as the case may be, arising. And so we're very encouraged that we can get folks tested in their local community in some of the easiest ways possible moving forward as we seek to contain the disease and make tracking a little easier on our folks here at Public Health, Mr. President.
All right. Have we, we're only a week and a half or so into the governor's restart plan. Have we talked at the initial about a slight increase in new cases. Does public health have a stance on how that is going so far?
In terms of the restart, I know that Mayor Ginther and Dr. Roberts, our health commissioner, tried to be very clear about the handful of things that they wanted to see in place before we started to really reopen our society and our communities. The first was flexible and expanded testing. we believe that we are moving towards that. As we've moved to the priority 4 testing category, there's only one category below that. That's priority 5, and that would be asymptomatic or non-symptomatic individuals getting testing. So we feel as if testing has been expanded. That criteria should be loosening up. We've also seen, as our second point, was increased testing supplies and kits. We think that that is happening. I think that there was a little bit of shock to kind of the medical equipment, medical supply chains as this was coming online. Those supply chains are bouncing back. We're seeing our hospital systems be able to acquire and procure the reagent, chemicals, and solvents that they need in order to perform tests, so that they don't just have a machine that can perform thousands of tests, but they actually have the materials to perform thousands of tests. Obviously, at Columbus Public Health, we encourage folks to wear masks while in public. We're very happy to partner with Columbus City Council and with our mayor to encourage everyone, when they're out in public in Columbus, Ohio, to wear a mask to protect themselves, to protect others, and to protect their loved ones when they go home. We were also looking for long-term care facility guidance and assistance from the state, and that was forthcoming almost immediately. And so that's been very helpful, as we have seen cluster outbreaks in some of our long-term care facilities, and so we're very happy about that. And then the last thing that we'll be looking for from the state, which we understand is a bit of a moving target, is mass gathering guidance. We understand how important things like Ohio State football are here in Columbus, or Columbus Crew Soccer, or Columbus Blue Jackets hockey finishing their season. And so we'll want to see what some of that mass gathering guidance looks like from the state in order to wrap our arms around what a responsible restart Columbus will be. We feel like 4 of those 5 criteria from the beginning have been addressed, and we're pretty happy with where they landed, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, sir. The last question is directly from one of our residents, Robert Lesher in Victorian Village. He states and asks, the state of Ohio has set up a portal where employers can report employees who do not return to work for safety fears, so they can be kicked off of their unemployment. Will Columbus support any channel where employees can report their employers if they're not protecting their workers by strictly adhering to safety guidelines? Currently, the focus of the state seems to be protecting businesses and not the workers.
That's a great question, Mr. President. And we would encourage employees and employers to call our coronavirus hotline, 614-645-1519. If they feel that they're in a set of circumstances that aren't safe, if there's not provision to hand washing or proper hand hygiene, if they're not following some of these orders and advisories, that 1519, so 645-1519, is that venue that we would ask people to call and to let us know, so that we can be aware, so that we can engage in education, technical assistance, and provide advice to our business community to ensure that we are doing everything that we can to mitigate the spread of this virus and protect folks who maybe don't have the luxury of going out to work because they are in some of these compromised situations, whether that's medically or otherwise. And so once again, one last time, if you have an issue that you want to report to Columbus Public Health, the number is 614-645-1519.
Thank you, Director. So in short, the answer to Mr. Leffner's question is yes, we do have that hotline, or that opportunity to report any business that is not adhering to those strict guidelines and putting any worker at risk as we transition to this next phase. So we appreciate your leadership and everybody at Department of Public Health. Please pass along council's sincere appreciation for the work that they've been doing. All right, so moving along, council, along with the Columbus Urban League, the African American Chamber, and a number of other local organizations are encouraging folks to buy black. Buy Black Thursdays has been a mainstay in Columbus for the last several weeks. We all know that small businesses are hurting during this time, but especially minority-owned businesses. That's why on this Thursday, we'll be sharing a list of Black-owned businesses for folks to support and encouraging folks to post a picture tagging the Black-owned business that they have supported and use the hashtag Buy Black Thursdays. Like I said, it's really important that we continue to support all of our local and small minority businesses. But we know that the effects of this virus have weighed heavily on minority and women-owned businesses. And so this was our little fun way that we can get more capital into the hands of our local economy. So thank you for supporting. We are going to go next to Councilmember Remy. Councilmember Remy is going to talk to us about small business and the Mask Up initiative. Councilmember, happy holidays, or hope you had a fun, safe, and healthy holidays.
Same
you have the floor.
Same back to you, Council President Harden. Thank you so much for hosting once again. I certainly want to start out by thanking you, my colleagues, our guests today, and the community for realizing the importance of these discussions. It goes without saying, I consider it a great honor and privilege to engage our residents in this capacity. I'd also like to thank our amazing council team for their hard work in preparing us for this afternoon, and residents who submitted questions to the town hall. As we continue to navigate through the challenges surrounding COVID-19, the city has been diligently working to locate resources to aid our local community, especially our small business community, and craft solutions to what has now become the new normal. We have a great deal of unique small businesses locally whose needs vary greatly. It's also important to note that small businesses and their employees have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So it's critical that we focus on the small neighborhood businesses who have not benefited from the PPP program, perhaps. This is why I'm pleased to have both Alice Fuller and Deante Johnson join our discussion today and share their perspectives. Now, Deante is the owner of Classic Soul, and Alice is the one of the co-founders of Elevate Northland and the president of the Northland Area Business Association. So I'll let Deante go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about who you are, and then we'll follow up with Alice.
Yep. First of all, thank you for having me today. I'm Deante Johnson, again, owner of Soul Classics in the Short North, and I'm going to Dublin location as well. So we're a sneaker and apparel boutique and been around since 2006.
If the guy would get the name right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And then Alice, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks so much for including us and including Northland. My name is Alice Fuller, and I'm the president of the Northland Area Business Association. And I'm a small business owner myself, and we've seen some interesting statistics coming out of our community in terms of how our small businesses are doing and what kind of resources they had to start with that would put them at an advantage or disadvantage. So excited to share that with everyone today. Thanks.
Well, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to have you here today and hear more. So, Council President, are you asking the questions? Am I asking some of the questions? I'm not sure which is which.
Councilmember, if you have the questions, go ahead and entertain the conversation.
Okay. So, well, first off, tell us what you've had to do, at the onset of the pandemic, and then how you There we go. Go ahead, Deante. Tell us what happened, on the onset. Obviously, you had to shut down for a while, I'm sure. And then how have you adapted and opened back up as a result of the new normal?
Well, definitely. I mean, the first things first, we had to shut down because, we didn't know what was going on. So that meant shutting down online business. That meant shutting down in store, obviously. But the biggest obstacle is, we don't necessarily, Ohio's not going by the same guidelines. We were on the forefront in a lot of cases for what was going on in the rest of the world. So a lot of our suppliers were still sending product. We had a lot of boxes, come and get returned, and, ran into a lot of logistical issues, so to say, because of it. So Now we've been able to kind of stabilize a little bit. Being able to sell online carried us through the lowest of the points, and then now we're just taking the safety protocols.
How have your customers adapted to those protocols, would you say?
So it has not been as painful as I assumed it was going to be. Most of our customers are pretty straightforward. We have a big sign on the door that says mask or required. The first 2 days, I would say people were a little bit more, not necessarily hesitant, but I guess disrespectful to the rules. People just want to be out and about, but for the most part, everybody's come with their own mask. Those who don't have it, we provide it for them. But it's been a little bit more understanding than I originally anticipated.
Have you had any challenges regarding those masks? We've heard some people say that that they've been challenged as small business owners in some cases, like the owner of Wylands, for instance. People saying, "I'm not going to shop there because you're making me wear a mask." Those types of things.
So yes, we have not had it so much just because we have a little bit more of a community clientele. So there's a lot of people that do feel that way. We receive those type of comments and on social media. We definitely have seen it, but it's not been as much. I believe, like if we were a grocery or something like that, people are a little bit more inclined to need. I think it would be a little, we would see it a lot more, but we have not faced that a ton in our situation.
That's good news. Of course, council started a couple weeks ago the Mask Up C-Bus campaign. I'm asking people to use the hashtag Mask Up C-Bus to get the word out. It's not just about you. It's about your neighbors, and it's about your family, and it's about the people that are small business owners. Alice, talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in the Northland area.
Sure. So in Northland, on the ground, heading to a normal shopping center along the edge of 161, you'll see small businesses still open and people going in with masks. And, I'm optimistic about how things are because it seems like if our new American population and the people who are most difficult to reach with communication are getting the message and wearing masks and doing the things that we're asking, then that's really great. I've been impressed with what I've seen. I think the piece that's the bigger challenge is that a lot of our businesses, our small family-owned businesses, didn't have websites. They don't know how to change their Google listing to show that their hours have changed or that they require you to make an appointment or things like that. They just don't have that technological foundation that larger businesses have. And so we're providing some supports in that area and providing information about it, but that's probably where the biggest amount of pain is. Some businesses are doing great. I know that there's a printing company on 161, and they've discovered that restaurants now have to have single-use menus. You can't reuse a plastic menu with multiple people, so they're making a great business out of printing single-use menus for restaurants, and that's a great profit center for them all of a sudden. So there's lots of ways people can pivot and get through this. As Deante was saying, a lot of that can be online sales, and unfortunately for some of the smallest businesses, that's a hurdle that has been too big in the past, and they didn't have that set up, or they didn't have online ordering or delivery and all that. So some of them are able to figure it out and make that change right now, and for the other ones, we're directing them to the resources that the city's website is set up, and also Elevate Northland is creating an online marketplace for people who don't have e-commerce to come together and use a common one so the cost isn't so much.
What is there anything either one of you feel that a resource that's not being available to you today, and how can we help?
Am I muted? Okay, no, I'm not. I'll go first. I believe that there are two types of resources. One, it's been very difficult at consistently finding the PPE. We are basically up against the same battle that any citizen would have. Well, we hear that sanitizer is available. Well, hand sanitizer has been a little bit more available lately. But things like Lysol, if we hear that Sam's Club has Lysol, we try to rush there to get it. There's no window for business owners to kind of get our hands on these type of things. I think it's becoming a little bit more available, but I know that there's still things that we're struggling to find that we need in order to open and be operational. And then I also think that one of my biggest concerns is something that's not physical product. It's more so the resource of accountants, people that are financially literate that can help people or be that bridge of resource. I think that where we're going to run into a lot of issues is going to be as the dust settles. And let's say you did get a PPE loan, or I mean a PPP loan, or any other type of assistance, not having that resource to tell you how to properly fill in your information, or what to look for. What resources are actually out there. A lot of people couldn't afford an accountant. A lot of small businesses don't employ any type of person to keep their books. So as these things become due, it would suck for you to do all that to get a PPP loan, and then you make an error and have to give it all back. Or any other resource for that matter. I think that's going to be a big situation that we run into a small business, as most small businesses do not have those resources available.
By the way,
Yeah.
I was at Sam's Club this afternoon. They had masks, even surprisingly.
Oh wow.
One per
Yeah,
customer. One
yeah,
box.
that's mostly what I've been finding with masks. We keep trying to find different places to order them from, because if you find them locally, you're going to be able to just walk out with like one, or maybe
Yeah.
five or something like that. Not enough.
Alice, resources that we can help.
Yeah, to echo what Deante was saying about the professional services, I think, the reliable information is one of those challenges, because if people aren't seeking out their own information from a reliable source, what they're getting is a whole bunch of solicitations from people trying to take advantage of folks. And, hey, we can get you your PPP loan, and it's not even, if it's not your bank, then you need to delete that message. But there's a lot of people trying to prey on people right now and if you're not actively going to seek the information from a source you trust, like, the city's COVID-19 page for small business owners, or um, financial media. When the PPP loan first came out, that it was being passed in Congress and enacted like the next day, and no one had even read the whole legislation. So the information about how to apply for it and what was forgivable and what was not, I was out there reading Forbes and everything I could get my hands on, and SBA PowerPoint presentations that had been created the day before, and trying to put it together and get it out to our members and our business owners. But for those who weren't doing that or didn't have a reliable source, I think it's very easy for people to just get stuff in their inbox and think, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like this person says I'm supposed to sign up for this thing. And I just imagine that's going to be more prevalent as there's, just more confusion, more time for people to come up with schemes and try to trick people. So I think having reliable information and knowing for people to know where to go is super important.
I think we hear you loud and clear on that. And, the technical assistance providers that we're working with to try to make sure that they're available and their resources for our small businesses. We know how important, the small business ecosystem is to the city of Columbus. And so I'm pleased to have the opportunity to work with Council President, all my colleagues, and the mayor, and we're working to finalize an assistance program that will be announced later this week. And a big component of it will be that technical resource component that will help with just the things that you identified here today. So we appreciate your hard work on that. I think one thing I got to point out about Deante's business, somebody texted me and said, "What do you sell?" I know what you sell, but
Right.
Give you the opportunity.
We sell sneakers, so that's the cornerstone of everything that we do. That's one of the reasons why I don't try to complain as much, because us carrying national brands, we have a little bit more foothold than like we said, somebody that's smaller, that's a little, that has more local items. So even though we've been impacted, I try to always think first about those who don't have as much, or don't have a Nike to sell or something of that sort. So it's definitely like listening to my peers and talk about their struggles and what we've talked about together. definitely a very confusing time for a lot of people.
There were a couple questions from the public I saw. One is the question is council, the legislation that are being put forth place and efficient enough, let me see, that are being put in place are efficient enough to have safety, but also have growth and allow business to operate reasonably? I think that's a good question back to you guys. If you've had to work with us as far as, especially you, Deante, I don't know if you've had any interaction with our Columbus Public Health Department, but we're trying to make sure that people, we provide as concise and clear information as possible on operations, and also be there as a resource if things aren't working correctly. How can we improve them? Would you say that, have you had any interaction in that way?
I feel like I've clicked every link and seen every, we've been following very closely with everything just because, I wanted to be mindful of my staff like that first and foremost. I didn't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position. So making sure that, we are read up on everything that's going on has been the most important part. But I also feel like I have a good enough management team to free up time to be able to do so. That's my fear with a lot of small businesses. When you have an owner operator that has to spend all this time figuring out where the money's going to come from, you can have step by step resources, and it's going to be hard for them to dedicate the time to be able to break down the messaging. So that's a big part of the concern. Is I definitely believe that the information is out there. But I think some people are going to need actual assistance, like physical help, somebody to actually spend some time, like, whether it's hard for you to say volunteer anytime, but we have people that are furloughed and at home. We need some help with business owners who, are spending all their time trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet, and need some additional assistance.
So, real quick, I just want to make sure that everybody has the website, columbus.gov/small business. That's where our small business resource guide is to coronavirus. And additional details will be populated throughout as we announce the packages that we're going to be providing to the city of Columbus and the small businesses that are there. So thank you both for your time today. I'm going to, I guess, kick it back to President Hardin.
Thank you so much, Councilman Marimi, and thank you to Alice and Deante for giving us that information. We know that it has not been easy over the last several months, and yet you guys have not just done the work, but you've also helped other small businesses, and that's really what Columbus is about. And as Councilmember Marimi said, been working with his office and the mayor's office and my other colleagues to make sure that this package that we'll talk about on Thursday is thoughtful, that it tries to fill some of the holes that were created by the first and second round of PPP, where a lot of our smaller businesses were not able to participate fully. And so we hope that Columbus can fill some of those gaps. So please, for all those who are watching, who are interested, watch this space. We are going to work diligently too on a communications plan to get out how those small businesses can get access to the package that we will talk about later this weekend or later this week. So thank you again, Councilman Marimi. So first up, before we go to the next segment, just want to remind everyone that it is still census time. The 2020 census is here. You can go to www.2020census.gov to fill it out. I promise you it takes 5 to 10 minutes to do so. This is how our city, our state receives the resources to do the most critical things. Anything that we've talked about today, everything that we've talked about today, and everything that we've been talking about all comes down to knowing how many people we have in our jurisdiction and having the appropriate allotment of resources to be able to serve each of you in the correct way. If you're not counted, that means that we don't have the resources to serve us. So please do so. But now I'm going to switch over to my friend, our President Pro Tem, Elizabeth Brown, who's going to talk to us about reopening as we slowly transition. How do we do that and keep our children safe, keep them engaged over the summer? I got to watch the press conference with President Pro Tem and the mayor and other folks to talk about plans for the summer. So looking forward to this conversation. President Pro Tem?
Thank you, Council President. Before I started on my topic, I did want to just say to Deante that my husband was in your store on Saturday and got some pretty slick Vans. So we appreciate the rules that you have in place. It makes us feel very safe to continue shopping with you. So I actually had no idea that that timing would occur. And my husband was walking by and I said, go get your shoes. So thank you. Well, I am really glad to have this space to talk about some of the childcare issues that working parents are facing. I think now more than ever, we're understanding something that's always been true, which is that quality childcare is a public infrastructure and it needs to be treated that way. We have unfortunately failed to invest in high quality childcare like infrastructure, and that makes it extremely vulnerable to these chaotic times that we're all now in. High quality childcare is one of the best economic development tools and of course educational tools that we have in our economy today and for our future. It gives parents the flexibility they need to work and support their families. And quality early childcare is also just plain good for kids. It helps them prepare for success in life later. And it's just critical for their ongoing development. It helps to close the opportunity gap, which we know is a persistent and frankly all too defining problem in American culture. So it's critical that all levels of government give support and resources to protect this asset. Childcare providers are, in most cases, small businesses or small organizations. And supporting small businesses and the workers that they employ is yet another factor amplifying why it is so important to support this critical infrastructure in our community. In the midst of new rules and restrictions and uncertainty, we have local champions right here in Columbus who are doing their best to maintain the vital childcare infrastructure that we need. So we're going to dig into this much more to kind of unpack some of those things I previewed, but I am happy to welcome a local provider to talk about how he's moving forward with reopening, and particularly a resource he's developed to support other centers as they navigate these uncertain times. So it's with pleasure that I introduce to you Colin Mcguinness with the Southside Early Learning Center. Colin, take it away. Be sure to walk through the playbook, but also provide anything else from the wealth of knowledge you have as a provider.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. So I would say about a week ago, the first thing my staff started considering when we were told we could open up on June 1st was how are we going to do that in a way that was safe, not only for the 115 littles that we serve every day, but truly the 39 staff that I have, because without them, the program doesn't function, it doesn't work, and they really are the gems that make up Southside Early Learning. And in doing that, we realized we could put all of this time and effort into creating what was going to be the playbook for our staff and our team, or we could think a little bit different. We could use the back-end infrastructure that we've developed over the past year in an initiative that we call Project Noodle, and really think about how can we turn this into a resource that can be used by all providers for free, with a template to really fill in the gap that was present at the time. So we were told, we were given the order from the state that we could open up on June 1st, and told that ODJFS, the Department of Jobs and Family Services, was going to be working diligently to put practices into place and give us resources that we need. And we're super thankful that they're doing that. But the reality is we needed something to start thinking about right now. What is it going to look like? So we launched reopeningchildcare.com, which is a open source playbook that when printed out is about 62 pages, that really gets into the nitty gritty of creating a standard operating procedure that we believe from experts at public health and the CDC and in the field of early childhood is really going to make it as seamless as possible to navigate the new normal that we're facing in terms of providing early education and childcare for Columbus's families. And we wanted to make sure in doing that that it was open and accessible and something that all providers could use that are center-based. Unfortunately, our wheelhouse is in the center-based, so we haven't been able to tap quite yet into home providers. We're thinking about if there's a way that we can lend our expertise there. But before the call, I'm super excited to share that we had 135 actually download the playbook and start adapting it for their school or their center. And just about 500 have been viewing the resource online and using it as a template to reopening their program.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to, we want to turn to questions because we know that a lot of residents have them. And, as a parent, I think that the questions for centers are difficult because parents are your customer, the littles are your customers and parents are your customers. And they make decisions very differently when it comes to the health and safety of their babies. So it is, I know, a very high stakes environment for you. And in the meantime, over the years that I've known you, I know how much respect and admiration you have for your staff. And you mentioned that so much of your playbook is about caring for a safe environment for them to be able to stay well in. So I really appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about childcare for school-age kids, and then, Council President, I'll turn it back over to you to get to questions that we've gotten from residents. We recognize that families with children older than a traditional childcare age also need a great deal of support in this time. Typically, this is provided through traditional K through 12 schools for most of the year. And during a typical summer break, having a safe place for our kids continues to be critical for them and critical for working parents everywhere. This summer looks so different because our traditions have been upended. Our normal gathering places, our normal camps have to change. And we also know that the summer is actually a risky time for some kids, not just physical health, because there's not the regularity of school and the regularity of nutrition provided at school, but also because most kids come back to school in the fall having lost some learning, right? We call it summer learning loss, and every year it's a challenge for teachers, no matter what school they teach in. But we know for kids of low-income parents who don't have access to expensive enrichment opportunities, or even whose parents can't work the regular hours that allow them to be home with regularity, that they really stand to lose a lot more. So when I look at summer, it is about keeping kids safe, but it's also about trying to prevent harm to our kids' learning for the future. We are raising a generation collectively right now. And we all should want for everyone's kids what we want for our own. So during summer break, having a safe place is top of mind for the city. The programs and camps offered by Columbus Rec and Parks fill a vital need on a regular basis for Columbus families. And it's a priority that we continue to safely provide these opportunities, but the pandemic has changed how that will happen. Columbus Rec and Parks worked closely with our public health department, which is a gem, and under guidance from the state to establish guidelines for adjusted group sizes and formats, essentially to maintain health and safety of participants, as well as their families, of course. So things you would expect, like face masks and social distancing, increased sanitization, and smaller class sizes. We've also had to actually take a look at which programs will be offered. So programs are scheduled to resume on June 15th. They include general recreation, fitness, and some creative arts programs. Other programs continue to be evaluated as staff determine if they can resume under safe conditions. Things like theater, art, tennis, and hockey camps, we might find a way to be able to safely offer them, but we aren't sure yet. And then there are some camps that we actually know cannot be done under social distancing guidelines. Things like wrestling and boxing. Camps serving kids under the age of 5, the department doesn't feel they're able to do. Robotics is a very team-oriented camp. We cannot do that. Camps that involve high contact basically can't go forward. And it's a tough decision for everyone. But we need to be able to do something and keep people safe. So everyone can go to columbus.gov/RecParksCovid-19 for updated information and guidance on summer programming. The Recreation and Parks Department continues to do their best to serve as many kids as possible within these parameters. We will serve fewer kids this year than we typically do, but that just means that we are already planning to work more closely with community partners to try to expand their options so that hopefully overall, not many fewer kids in our city will be served, even if the capacity of each organization is slightly diminished. So again, please go and visit, for anyone who's listening who has school-age children, columbus.gov/RecParksCovid-19. And that's all I had on the school-age children side, President Hardin. So I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I don't know if you had any questions. I was so enthralled by you and Colin's conversation. If you have them, go ahead. If not, I can read the ones that we got on our side.
Sure. I got a couple. I'm still off mute, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So one that we received was, could you please discuss or share with the group why it is so challenging for childcare organizations to sustain in our community? So one thing we've talked about is, because childcare organizations function as small organizations or small businesses, not large corporations with reserves or a lot of options, they work on very narrow margins. We are in fear of losing those options for the long term. And mostly that has to do with these new guidelines and the strain put on them by shutting down. I would actually like to ask Colin to explain a little bit better what that's like in the daily life of a childcare center. Why does the pandemic actually pose a risk for the survival? I'm not saying Southside Learning is on the precipice of closing, but as a provider, you see why some providers would struggle to stay open for the long term if we don't double down on our investment in our centers and our kids.
Yeah, so one thing that I think is super important to remember and consider is, unlike schools that are more enrollment based in the way reimbursement from public sources, whether that's federal or local dollars or state dollars play out, early childhood really is an attendance-based reimbursement system. So our operations are either private pay tuition, which is, if you have young children yourself, incredibly expensive, but it's kind of the nature of the beast in early childhood. In order to get high quality, to have a safe environment, there are expenses and costs to that. And I can promise you they aren't going to teaching staff. The average early childhood teacher is making $10.38 in Columbus. But because we're in this attendance-based reimbursement system, really entire organizations are built on the reimbursement that we were getting on a monthly basis prior to COVID. Now that we're entering into situations where ratios are reduced, so in preschool, for example, depending on the age of the little in the room, you could have as many as 18 or 24 in a classroom. So at Southside, all of our rooms are built around 2 or 3 teachers and 18 students. Under the new restrictions with COVID, we are only able to do a 1-to-9 ratio. So 1 teacher with 9 students in that room, regardless of which funding source they're in, or where their parents are working or not working. And the challenge that we have is either, as an organization, shed as much cost as you possibly can, which, Councilwoman, I'm not going to go ahead and lay off my teachers. That's not something I'm willing to do. So I'm trying to maintain a full workforce and full programming capacity under new, incredibly restricted ratios. But those restrictions are important. So I'm not advocating for an abolishment of these new ratios, because it's the only way we truly can social distance children under the age of 5. It's incredibly hard, if you have a little one in the house, to ask them not to go up to their friend and give them a hug or play with them during circle time or an activity. So these ratios truly are meant, and the playbook goes over this a bit, to create social distancing in the classroom in a way that's safe and meets that max of 10 gathering that we know is best practice from public health.
Thank you. I also got a question about PPP loans and our childcare providers. And there's nothing that stops a childcare provider from applying for a PPP loan. But we all know some of as our small business folks who are on the line today, and as Council President Councilmember Remy said, there are limitations with the PPP program. Often centers are owned by women and often women of color. And those were exactly the categories that had a harder time accessing PPP loans. So we know that program is not near sufficient for what we need to invest in our childcare. And many childcare advocates are really turning to this next coronavirus stimulus moving through Congress to truly invest in early childhood so that we don't lose those slots. Some of the national studies have shown that possibly 45% of centers could close if we don't invest in their sustainability. And that would mean that there are 3 to 4 children who need a slot for every 1 slot that exists nationally. We are already on the wrong side of the cost equation in childcare. I mean, it's so expensive because it needs to be to provide good education, but families can't afford it. So imagine what happens if the supply and demand goes out of whack like that. Yeah. So it's very high stakes.
So I was gonna say the 2 other things that I'd like to throw in there if I could, even an organization like Southside Early Learning that's been around since 1922, and we have awesome members of our board of directors that are savvy and can provide me with the resources that I need. It took us to the 2nd round of PPP to actually become eligible and receive our loan. And I had the first application went in the Friday that it was announced. So if I didn't have the network and resources of folks that were willing to lend us a hand and help us through that process, like any small business, it was difficult to navigate. And I'm incredibly thankful that we were able to reach that. With the up to 45%, at Southside, we have a wait list of 18 months right now. So 2 pregnancies before you actually have your child, you need to be on a wait list, and that's just not feasible. It's not realistic. If we now are looking at up to 45% of our childcare infrastructure diminishing, I truly do not know where those families are going to go. And that's something we really need to be thoughtful about. And that could be something that council and the mayor's office could take up. How can we utilize space like our school buildings that maybe aren't being utilized until September, and allow the neighborhood provider to fill in that space and tap into those resources? Because really, if we have this fallout, it's going to be difficult to reach and connect with some of our most in need families that are served by providers like ourselves and Columbus Early Learning Centers and the YMCA of Central Ohio. We need to make sure we stay in contact with these families until they start their official, their K-12 school journey.
All right, so I have 60 seconds left. I want to ask you one last question, Colin. So if you could just give me the concise version of it. I want to talk about parents. So parents right now have some fears in returning their children to normalcy, or I know it's not normal, but returning them to that group care setting. What do you say to parents who are nervous? How do you make them feel safe dropping their kids off at your door?
So know that there is no person that's going to love and care for your child as much, like, we are this number 2 closest thing to parents themselves. When we bring our littles into our classrooms, they become part of our extended family, and we are, as providers, are doing everything that we possibly can to keep them safe and secure and cared for. But also know that we understand your decision. If you choose, you need a little bit more time, and don't be afraid to talk to your provider and see if there's anything that they can do. And every organization is going to be different, but see if there's anything that they can do for you to come back gradually. And just talk to your provider and stay in communication, but know that we love your little just as much as you do at home.
Thank you, Colin. That is awesome. And I also know that is accurate, having visited your center and meeting your teachers and you. So thank you for joining us. And I'm going to give that URL one more time with my last 5 seconds here. For the school age kids side, Rec and Parks Camps, columbus.gov/RecParks COVID-19. Thank you again, Colin. And back to you, Council President.
Great job, President Pro Tem, on time management. I actually will yield back 30 more seconds. Do you have any closing remarks?
Love it. My only closing remarks, I think, is what we've really tried to hit already, which is how critical it is for us to be a part of the solution. There's so much on the line, and investing in our kids is investing in our future, but it's investing in our present too. Kids are not a future problem; they're a today asset. And these investments to keep our childcare industry, not even just to keep it, but to make it stronger, and to be there for our youth. I think there is so much more work to be done here. And I know that the City Council and that the city are up for it to be a part of the answer. So thank you, Council President.
Well said. Councilmember Remy, any closing remarks?
Thanks, Council President. We just know that, supporting small businesses is the same as, during this pandemic, is supporting our families in the city. And it also really helps to contribute to the city's bottom line and the services that we're able to provide. So we really understand the importance of it. Both these topics today are critical to the success of Columbus. And so, we're here to help support in every way in both of these areas, and we look forward to the opportunity to do so in the future. So thanks again for organizing, Council President Hardin. It was another great discussion.
Well, thank you again. 2 great conversations about 2 really important issues by 2 great advocates. So just thank everybody for participating. We look forward to seeing everybody. We won't have our town hall next week, as we will have our regularly scheduled meeting on June 1st, council meeting on June 1st at 5 p.m. Always encourage residents, even though we're not meeting in person, to still engage as if we were. You can speak on any piece of legislation. You can call, you can engage. So we certainly encourage you to do so. Have a great evening.